Welcome to the Modern Classrooms Project podcast. Each week, we bring you discussions with educators on how they use blended, self-paced, and mastery-based learning to better serve their students. We believe teachers learn best from each other, so this is our way of lifting up the voices of leaders and innovators in our community. This is the Modern Classrooms Project podcast. Hello and welcome to the Modern Classrooms Project podcast. My name is Zach Diamond, and I'm a high school media production teacher in Washington, D.C., and a Modern Classrooms implementer. And today, I'm very excited to be joined by Miguel Melchor, a personalized learning coordinator in Chicago and a Modern Classrooms mentor. Welcome to the podcast, Miguel. Really happy to have you.
Thank you for having me. I'm very excited to be here.
Miguel, you're kind of like already enlightening me because you mentioned involving the students' families as part of your process. And I hadn't even thought of that. Like what I imagined in the context of math and English language learners was like classroom stuff, basically, right? But I love the idea of involving the families. Do you think you could tell me, I know it's not even in the questions that I wrote because I hadn't thought of it. Do you think you could tell me a little bit more about what that looked like? Or maybe that will come up in the rest of our conversation as well.
So for me, like when I started thinking about my students, I really started thinking about making content accessible. And I usually start out by building relationships with my students. Yeah. I spend like the beginning of the year getting to know my students as people and as learners. And I use the families as a way for me to better understand their student. So I do spend a lot of time getting to know my students' linguistic assets, their experiential assets, their social emotional assets, and their cultural assets. And that information comes through their parents and understanding their role in education and how they view teaching and learning. Because a lot of our parents are refugees and they are immigrants. So they are bringing a lot of their cultures and their experiences into our school. So for me to better serve them, I do spend a lot of time getting to know my students, and we use what we call the learner profile, which is think of it as a student portfolio where students write down they answer questions on the learner preferences, their experiences with math, what are their goals, what do they hope to aspire after they leave 6th grade, move on to the next grade. So it's a way to collect and to document the progression of my students' progress throughout the entire year. And the parents played a huge role in that process.
That's awesome. I'll link all of that in the show notes, listeners, to check it out.
It's not just about scaffolding the content, but making it meaningful for them and personalized for them. I try to provide multiple entry points into solving problems. So if students aren't ready to compute, they can still engage in reasoning using visual representation. And that is where MCP is powerful, because students who are ready to move ahead can do so without waiting for the rest of the class. And students who need more time, they have the time to revisit content without any stigma. And those in the middle, they get the support through small groups, blended learning, and the scaffolds. Because I'm trying to meet students at both ends, students who are like the high achievers who are always ahead of pace, planning for those students, and then planning for students who need additional scaffolds and supports. And all of those supports help my students in the middle move ahead as well.
Right, of course. Accessibility benefits everybody, right? So you were developing materials uniquely for them to be able to access what was happening in those classes?
Yes, and that's when the MCP model would come into play, because I would create my instructional videos to be highly visual, and especially now with technology, you're able to translate the different videos to different languages using ScreenPal and Screencastify. For example, like Pashto, which is a language in our building. We don't have teachers speak that language, but now we're able to record instructional videos and change the language, not just the captions, but also the voiceovers. The best ways for students to practice with a peer, discussing, using the words, giving opportunities for them to write it out in sentences, and to really engage through the math and the context and the content.
Totally. And that's awesome. And, talking about accessibility benefiting everyone, like the native English speakers will benefit from that too,
Yeah,
right?
because I always say that everyone's learning academic language, like we're all
Yes.
like EL learners in that sense. Like we're all learning that language together, and the students really do support each other, and they're very understanding of each other's needs, because they know, like at our school we have several refugee students who are newcomers who don't know the language, and I use those students who are in the classroom as supports, as tutors, and as mentors for those students to teach them in the class as well.
Yeah, I think that's awesome because I guess now that we're talking about this, you're making me realize like there are sort of two different types of vocabulary learning that I was imagining. Like if the native English speakers are just encountering these words for the first time, they're all learning together, right?
Exactly.
But I would imagine that there are also words that would need to be taught remedially, right? Like that if a student is a newcomer to the US and they're in fourth grade, there might be math words or science words that their peers have been learning since, kindergarten, first, second, third grade that they have to be taught. Is there a difference there, or do you teach those words in the same way?
I will teach them in the same way. I believe in having those high expectations and making sure that they're getting exposed to the language and to the experiences in the class, and providing those supports like through small groups, through conferencing, and providing the additional vocabulary that they may need. Those collaborative structures that will help students engage and discuss with each other. And lots of choice. I like to give students choice, and through the model, it does give opportunities to give students choice if they want to work using a paper activity or a digital activity, or choice in their assessment, how they want to present their knowledge for the mastery checks. Some mastery checks kids want to use Google Forms. Some kids want to use a exit ticket on paper. Other students want to be able to speak about it, or some just want to be able to model it using gestures and explain it through. So I like using all the different parts of the model to really achieve that personalized learning instruction in the class.
A question occurs to me, like if a student is able to express to you that they've learned a math or science concept in their native language, is that like enough, or do you work with them to express that in English?
I think for me, if they're able to use it in their native language, then to me that's mastery, because I'm focusing on the content.
Right.
If I'm focusing on the content, then yes, if they're able to use their native language to explain the concept and they mastered it, then yes, they'll get credit. But then I will still work with them through my small groups and through like my one-on-one conversations and really supporting them. And that's what I love about the model as well, is that it really frees me up. I'm not in the front of the class lecturing. As the students are self-pacing, my role as a teacher really shifts. I'm become not just the teacher given knowledge, but really become the coach and the facilitator. And it gives me the time to really meet with students, to support them one-on-one, and to provide that encouragement, and also to build relationships with the kids. So I like asking teachers, like, what do you want learning to look like and feel like in your classroom? And then from there, we start talking about how can MCP support your vision in your class. And what's great about being in this PL personalized learning role is a lot of the teachers in my building have already gone through the training, have already done, they work with a mentor. So I'm just really there to support their vision for implementation, because it looks different for everyone. It will look different in an ELA classroom, from a math classroom, from a science class to a music class. The practice is still the same, but I always tell teachers, you don't have to completely reinvent the wheel and change what you already are doing, because a lot of the practices of MCP, they're just good teaching practices, like having clear learning targets, having practice aligned to that learning target, and allowing kids choice through the self-pacing and the learning plans. So I support teachers in adapting their curriculum to be self-paced, creating clear learning plans, and building strong systems and routines so students take ownership. We also practice having strong opening routines through check-ins, and closing routines where students are able to reflect on their learning. And my experience as a coach, it has strengthened my mentoring in the program, because now I can provide resources and concrete examples to my mentees of what I've experienced and I've seen in the classroom, which makes it even, also as someone who's implemented the model myself, I'm able to bring all of that into my mentoring and coaching to really support other teachers and their personalized learning journeys. It's funny because a lot of the teachers who have registered for the virtual mentorship program with MCP, we ended up matching through the course. So yes, I have mentored teachers this past summer, and now I'm supporting them in the classroom with implementation. And it's great because now, like, they're getting the information through the course, they're creating the materials, and I'm supporting them in that process of adapting their curriculum and building these resources and supporting them in that way. But now I can, because we work in the same building, now we can actually take those resources and actually implement it. So it's been really nice this first week that I've been we started school this week. It's been really nice to see how teachers have already implemented their Unit Zeros into their classrooms and how they're building those structures and those routines. And it was all because we did the work in the summer through the mentorship program.
That is so cool. And I imagine that in a way it's also an interesting feedback loop for you, right? Like, to see how your coaching is now playing out in the classroom. What a cool situation that you're in. That's so fascinating. And it's also cool to hear that so many teachers in your building are using MCP.
Yes.
That's awesome.
And they're all using it. And I've actually had, like, in the past, student teachers go through the course, like these newer teachers learning these new practices, and how I still keep in contact with many of them, and they're still, they saw it being implemented in my classroom, and now they're in their own classrooms, implemented in their own spaces.
The thing that I imagine here is, like, okay, a student is coming to the U.S. to start in 4th grade. Like, what if the U.S. 4th grade math standards are different from the math standards that they had where they're coming from in their home country, and there's a gap, or they're like 2 years ahead of the students that they're joining. And I also thought of, like, units of measure, right? They come to the U.S. and we use the imperial system, right? Like inches and miles, pounds, but they may be coming from the metric system. Like, how do you address in their learning these differences that come from a major cultural shift for them?
Well, I think one of the ways that we try to address all of their needs is first really getting to know them and their backgrounds, pre-assessing them to give us a baseline of where they are in the content. And from there, we start creating, like, individualized, like, learning plans. So within which we call, they're trackers for us, but we call them the learning plan. Sometimes in the learning plans, we might have, like, our prerequisites column where we want students, before moving on to, like, the real content standard, the grade level content, we want students to really master those prerequisites that they would have learned in the previous grade, which why pre-assessing them is critical in this process, because we need to know what knowledge they're bringing in, but also, like, in terms of their cultures, their experiences, but also understanding, like, what content knowledge, because that will determine the level of supports that we can provide in the classroom, and reaching out to the EL specialists to collaborate to bring in the EL strategies. But then also goes back to having those high expectations, because data, it gives you a baseline, but it's not the end all be all. We try to really get to know the students in the class, which is why we really enjoy having the kids self-pacing, because it really gives us, like, a visual, like, or an idea of what they're able to do. Because a lot of the kids are really good at being independent. They know how to collaborate really well. In their native language, they may know how to be able to read fluently, be able to write fluently. So using all of those skills that they bring and supporting that with them mastering the content in the classroom.
Thank you so much for listening. You can find links to topics and tools we discussed in our show notes for this episode. And remember, you can learn more about our work at www.modernclassrooms.org And you can learn the essentials of our model through our free course at learn.modernclassrooms.org. You can follow us on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at Modern Class Proj, that's Proj. We are so appreciative of all you do for students and schools. Have a great week, and we'll be back next Sunday with another episode of the Modern Classrooms Project podcast.